Thank you for joining Permission Granted. I'm your host, Juliette Ricci Lagman. Today we have a very special guest, Margaret Smith, nicknamed Mo, Margaret Mo Smith. She is a life coach and energy healer, and we're just going to get right into it. Welcome, Mo.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. I'm just going to let you start and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, like you mentioned, I'm a life coach, a business coach, an energy healer. I do retreats and workshops, and I've had this business called I Love It When for just over 4 years now. I can't even believe it as I say it. Yeah, I started it in the midst of the pandemic. Um, Prior to that, my journey to getting there has been a little bit all over the place, but ultimately, I really love helping humans and helping myself to be the best version of ourselves and realizing how powerful we are. So I do that in a number of different ways. And I love, love, love what I do now so much. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk about it.
Tell me about what brought you here is in your past career experience.
Hmm. Oh, it was a journey of feeling like I was always looking for the meaning. I was just never quite happy with where I was. And so I went through this journey of, if you know anything about the Enneagram and you're listening, I'm an Enneagram 4. And there's this longing that comes with being a 4. And that's when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I so identified with it because I have had some amazing experiences. I worked at the Seattle Art Museum for about 5 years before I fell into the real estate industry. And then in the real estate world, I was a director of operations for almost 8 years. And that's where I really realized, oh, wow, like I know how to run a small business. But there was always this
Mm,
part of me that was just like not quite at home.
mhm,
And there was a point when I was the director of operations for this real estate team where we hired someone who knew all about energy healing. She knew Reiki and she worked with the fairies and she had these fairy cards. And it was really through her that I finally gave myself permission to explore this part of life that I hadn't really explored yet. And that is everything spirituality. And really, because of that, it started this like domino effect of leading me down this path of exploring psychics, mediums, intuition, listening to my heart, listening to my soul, which had always been there and had always been talking
mm,
to me. But whenever I would share what I felt, because a lot of times I would say it like, hey, this is how I feel about this when I was talking about a business project or an
yeah.
idea. And people, oftentimes it would be men who would say to me, well, this isn't about feelings. This is just about, the black and white part of like, is this going to work or not? And I was like, no, but I feel this. And now I
Hmm.
realize like that was my intuition speaking to me. And
Yeah.
so it would often get shut down whenever I would speak it. And then I sometimes I would burst into tears because I immediately felt I felt that shut down. Like I felt like this part of me that was really hurt. So getting to start my own business, literally called I Love It When, which was a phrase given to me by my strategic intuitive mentor. I feel so free and I feel so much peace and love within myself that I can't imagine doing anything else. And so that's like a
Ugh.
little bit of a sneak peek into how I got here. But yeah, my background's in social work. I have my master's in social work, and I just have a love for people and a love for art. And so I've tried to
Mm.
combine all of my favorite things into what I'm doing.
Which is that explains why I was attracted to working with you because I'm a very creative person and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
lo and behold, I have a very spiritual side. So what a
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you so tell me more about I love it when. So the name of your business, as you
Mm-hmm.
stated, and
Mm-hmm.
it's on your t-shirt,
Yep.
is I love it when
Mm-hmm.
LLC. So when did you know, it sounds like Enmei gave you that phrase. When did you
Mm-hmm.
go, oh my gosh, that's it, and just run with it?
Yeah, good question. So this is a fun story because as the pandemic was starting and we started working from home, somehow I got this bee in my bonnet, if that's the right phrase, of like wanting to write all over my bedroom wall. And I'd thought of this before, but somehow it came back into my mind and I was like, what a better time than now? So I got out my Sharpies and I got out my black paint and I started writing my favorite quotes all over my
Oh,
wall. And so I have a picture of it up right now, actually, on my Facebook page. If anybody wants to go see it, it's like just free writing, just no stencils, just using my hands. And it was a way for me to get out all of these feelings that I was having as the pandemic was happening and all these things were changing in the US and around the world and people were panicking and a lot of fear was happening. And so I was writing on my wall at the same time I was also operating this group called Operation Tungsten Light, which was a free
oh,
Facebook group that basically gave people like speakers, classes, and all these things to do as the pandemic was unfolding to kind of help people feel more grounded. And so one day,
mm,
as I finally decided, like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, I feel like I was in a total fog when I decided to start my business. I was just like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to leave my job and do it. And I was on GoDaddy.com and I'm thinking, like, what should I name it? What should I name it? And I'm thinking about "bu" and all these different phrases that I've always loved that come from my mom. And then I'm like, well, what if I just go back to my wall and see what's on there? So I go back to my wall,
oh,
and on the upper right hand corner, I had written in huge, huge letters, "I love it when." And I was like, oh my God, is that available? And all of a sudden I could see in my mind t-shirts, hats. And that's how kind of how my brain works is when I'm looking to see if something fits, all of a sudden all these other ideas pop out. And so I went back
yep.
and it was available as a .org website. So I bought it and that's just how it started.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, it was meant to be.
It
Um,
totally was.
I know we talked about this before, but I'll just tell because I was attracted to the your business card, which is white with the black
Mm-hmm.
lettering, and it says "I love it when."
Hmm.
I picked it up at Choo Choo Bakery in Everett, and I had gone to this women's conference, and our mutual friend Kiana, who owns Urban
Hmm.
Yogis, she said, "Oh, do you know Mo? Oh, you don't know Mo? You should know Mo. I'm going to introduce you." She, of course, being a wonderful connector that she is, she
Yeah.
assumed that we knew each other. And I met you and we connected. It was wonderful. And then the next morning, I was tidying up in the bedroom and I was cleaning out I'd cleaned out my purse and thrown it in a bag. And there's your card. It just like floated out of the bag.
So
And
funny.
I was like, what a sign to work with you. I mean, just incredible.
That
Incredible.
story just is amazing. Yeah.
I love it so much. And I would put that down on, what we call our miracle list. Yeah,
Absolutely.
because
100%.
it was a sign.
It absolutely was. Yeah. And for those of you
Oh
that are
my God.
listening, that the "I love it when" phrase, the reason I love it so much is because Enmei gave it to me as a way to change my inner talk. So rather than saying, oh God, I hate it when this happens, like, why did this happen to me again? You change your mindset to start to say, oh, I love it when miracles unfold. I love it when I get to meet beautiful people. I love it when I get to be cozy in my home all day long. Like it's a phrase to help you reset your mind. So that's why it was just so perfect.
That is perfect. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
And if you guys haven't visited Mo's website, I love it when.org, definitely check it out. I'm going to go next to what are some unexpected shifts in your business and offerings that you've experienced in the recent last couple years?
Yeah. It's almost like my business has been reborn again. So there was this time. So when I first started my business, I really thought that the majority of my clients would be real estate admin because that was the network that I had really built when I was in the real estate industry. I had people coming from around the country to come to these retreats that I was hosting for real estate operations. And the thing about real estate operations and really other industries too for admin in general is 93% of those positions are filled with women. And especially in real estate, they don't really have the salary typically to pay for themselves to get coaching. And
Yeah,
oftentimes, there are a lot of real estate agents who are running teams and companies who should really not be running teams and companies. And so they also don't believe in coaching. It's not every real estate agent, but there's a lot of them. And so what ended up happening was I, yes, coached a few real estate admin and then some agents. And then I really, as I was allowing myself to explore more and more of what I really loved, this new part of my business was birthed. And that is that no matter what, I love it when, or whatever I do in the future, will always have a spiritual connection to it because that is part of my
mhm,
secret sauce. Like when people ask, how did you get where you are today? I can't not share the part about becoming an energy healer, about running
yeah,
energy through my business, about running energy through my home, about energy hygiene with myself. Like that's all a part of who I am. and getting messages from source, from the universe in order to make decisions. It's really a part of how I operate now. And so that happened where I realized, oh, my business is kind of shifting again about 2 years into it. So about 2 years ago is when it really shifted and it became, okay, now I offer energy healings. I do them on my own and I also do them with Crystal Novak, a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then my retreats are also pretty much now always have an element to them that have to do with energy or spirituality. Yeah.
Was it, and this may or may not be a silly question. I don't think it
Oh,
is
please. I
because
love all the
people need to
questions.
hear.
Yeah.
Was it scary embracing that part of,
Hmm.
we hear a lot of talk in the ether. In fact, my husband and I were talking about, oh, very woo woo, like,
Hmm.
let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Hmm.
Let's normalize it. Was it
Hmm.
scary embracing that part of yourself
Hmm.
and incorporating it
Oh,
into your
yeah.
business?
Oh, yeah. That's not a silly question at all. 100%. Yes, it was. And I think it was partially because of just, I've always, I think like everybody, I've always had this desire to fit in and this desire to be liked and to be loved. And at one point, I've shared this before, maybe with you, but maybe not. At one point, one of my friends, when I was working on the real estate team, one of my friends said to another one of my friends, how Margaret is everything to everyone. And I
Mm,
was like, oh shit, I can't be that. And if I am, that
red
means
flag.
I'm not being true to myself. And so, yeah, the more that I've allowed myself to explore this, the more I've had to confront what I'm afraid of. And part of it is from what I've experienced in this lifetime with just people being mean, being coming from a hurt place. But then part of it, I truly believe, is from previous lifetimes of where I have been killed or injured for speaking my truth and speaking up on behalf of other people. And so I
Yep.
think that's what I've really appreciated too about getting my past life readings and things that I've talked about previous lives because it's explained a lot of my behavior in this lifetime. A lot of my nervousness or fear has actually been from experiences in past lives where I was understandably like afraid for a reason.
Can
Yeah.
you talk about, this is something you and I've talked about,
Hmm.
essentially haters. Like the more
Hmm.
successful you get and the more you
Yeah.
break off in your own realm,
Hmm.
okay, what does that look like and what is
Hmm.
it an indication of?
Yeah. I think what I've realized is that it's an indication of I'm really being more and more true to myself.
Hmm.
And not that when you're true to yourself, people are going to hate you always. But for me in particular, I'd had circles of friends that liked me a certain way and they liked me. I was very mellow and I was very go with the flow. Like even before I would speak up more, I did speak up when it was something I was really passionate about. So like I may not have cared where we went for lunch or dinner. Like if someone's like, "Hey, what restaurant do you want to go to?" I'm like, "I don't care." But if it was someone was getting attacked or someone was being mean to someone and I wanted to speak up, I would. And so, wow, my mind just lost track of what you said.
Yeah, the
Funny. Tell me again what
haters
you asked. Oh,
really,
haters. Yes, thank you. And
yeah.
so, as I've become more of myself, which means I'm speaking up, I'm still very mellow, but I no longer just go with the flow if it doesn't serve me as well. And I
Yeah,
think that's where I would put myself in a lot of circles where I was like, I'll be okay. I'll just go with it. And even though I'm not having that much fun, it'll be okay. Because I realized I was beyond empty. I like my cup was like under the cup. It was like so empty
ooh,
because I was really always serving other people because I wanted other people to be happy. And I just thought like if other people were happy, then the world will feel better. Everybody will be happier. But I was unhappy. I was not filling my own cup. And so the more I've become myself and found friends and people that also fill my cup, those other people were unhappy. They were like, "What, WTF, Margaret? Where did the mellow go with the flow Margaret go?" And it's like, she's not here anymore. So if you
where's my puppet?
yeah. So there's some of those haters, like some of those haters who have been in my life, and then the online haters or the people who you don't know that, I just see that as a sign of like the bigger your circle gets, the bigger your energy field expands, and the more you allow yourself to be seen, it would only make sense that yeah, you're going to run into more people that you love and that love you, and there's also going to be more people who are like, coming from a hurt place and
Yeah.
saying mean things because they're like, she's living her truth, she's excited about life. I'm not, all of a sudden they're wondering why they're not. And it
Yeah.
so it's all yeah, it's definitely a sign I think that you're moving in the right direction in a lot of ways. You just have to be able to
Yeah.
have that perspective with it. Yeah.
And not let it shut you down, because I think
Yes.
that's what happens a lot is
Hmm.
you get a sense of rejection, or and it taps into that scarcity where you're like, ooh, I better not do that because I'm
Hmm.
gonna lose my quote unquote support system, and I'll
Hmm.
be outcast. But the truth is quite opposite. You'll
Hmm.
actually find your people.
Yes.
So yeah.
100%.
Tell me, I want to talk about burnout, but first,
Hmm.
before we do that, let me ask you about, because I know it's something you're really passionate about. You touched on past lives and things like that.
Hmm.
Tell me about the emotion code.
Oh, yes. You hit on one of my favorite topics right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's easily become my favorite book of 2024. And so the essence behind the emotion code written by Dr. Bradley Nelson is that through muscle testing, you can find trapped emotions in your body. And so as an energy healer, when I do energy healing sessions with folks, I am looking essentially to help them release trapped energy from their body. And so there's a number of ways in which you do that through asking through a meditation, where is it trapped and what's going on, and then moving energy through their body using Reiki or different techniques and things like that, like sound healing. Well, this
Hmm.
takes it to another level because I find that so far, it seems to be an even easier way to teach other people how to do this on themselves and on other people. So, like, it's one thing to explain Reiki to someone, but when you bring the emotion code, so it's because people are so logic based and we're still moving into allowing more intuitive based thinking. A lot of people are
Hmm.
still stuck so much in their left brain. So when they see the book and then they see like, oh, you do this with muscle testing or a pendulum or something, and a magnet, all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, there's tools and they're physical and I can see them. Okay, let me try this. And so
Yeah.
he basically shares this process with you where you use muscle testing to identify, like, do I have a trapped emotion related to my ideas around money? And then using
Hmm.
muscle testing, it'll tell you yes or no. And he has a chart of emotions, and you find the emotion on that chart. And then you ask, is it safe for me to release this? And if it's a yes,
Hmm.
then you use a magnet to run the magnet over your meridian, over your head 3 times, and boom, the emotion's gone. And so I've
Mm.
been working through myself with a number of different issues. And like if you're in any current physical pain, I this is my go-to thing now. Like if anybody's experiencing migraines, asthma, fibromyalgia, hip pain,
Hmm.
even ADHD, like anything physical, you can start to ask about these symptoms, and you will start to feel relief. And so I've now done, I think I just started this book like 2 months ago, and I think I've already done like 10 sessions on other people because I immediately
Yeah.
was like, I can see how this is working. And I love that it's so empowering. And I can now have coaching clients who are doing it on their cats, their dogs, their
That's
kids.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and it
so
works.
oh my God, it's just it's like a revolution in my brain happening. And I know this book has been out for a couple years, I believe. But it's now become a part of my practice and I can't wait to get
Yeah.
certified in it. Yeah.
Something that I'll just share with you,
Hmm.
in using the emotion code. So I was trying to read it linearly, and there's a lot of success stories in there, which
Yes,
I am always attracted to.
me too.
Yeah. But I felt like I was having trouble reading it in a linear fashion. So it is something where I found it feels like you can just um, jump back and forth between chapters and
Yes.
sections,
Hmm.
and find what you need. And another thing that, maybe we should, or when you reach out to the author, if it included a kit with a magnet and a pendulum, that would
Oh,
just be amazing, because
that's a good idea.
I put the pendulum and the magnet in the book and folded it, and it doesn't lay flat. So it just needs a little, it's like a
A
kit,
little
right?
pocket for it. Yes, that's a
Yeah.
great idea. I will tell him.
Yeah, because I mean, and also like for visual people like me, it brings that, visual aspect, or,
Yes.
gifting aspect to it.
Hmm.
Like one and done.
Totally. I would
Uh,
love that.
um, okay, so burnout. You touched on burnout. So you mentioned that your cup was less than empty. So since you left your role, and this goes into another question I had.
Mhm.
Since you left your corporate role and you started your own business, what does filling your cup up look like? And what does your sort of week to week look like? Like you've explained it to me where you day to day, you might be doing some self care, and that is part of your um, business so you have success.
Absolutely. All right. The first part of your question was, so what do I do on a weekly basis? But then the other part was,
Basically, yeah. So talk about
what do I do to
your
fill my cup?
yep.
Wow, this is so interesting that I'm so often on the other side asking questions
Yeah.
that sometimes, and then also I've recognized too that the more I'm in my intuitive side, the more the universe is like, oh, you don't need to remember that. Like just they
Yeah.
pull my head. It's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what do I do to fill my cup? I say no more.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I get a lot of, and I think it was more in the past too when I still had different circles of friends, but I would get a lot of requests to do certain things that I really didn't want to do. And I really
Yeah.
had a hard time saying no because I didn't want to disappoint people or make them upset or make them mad. But I say no a lot more, and I really respect my energy a lot more. So I have a
Mm.
really interesting makeup of energy that I like to refer to human design a lot because as a reflector, I'm a reflector. Um, there are different people who talk about reflectors, and I'm like, I think reflectors are in 1% or less of the population. It's really random. And I'm like, of course, I've
Isn't
got to be
that
a
wild?
reflector. My mind. And for those of you that are like, what's human design? Go listen to one of her previous episodes with
Yeah.
Avalon, right? Who talks about human
Mhm.
design. Um, but I've read a lot about how reflectors, you just have your own way of being and your own way of recouping your energy, and it's not going to look like anybody else. And so don't, for the longest time, I kept trying to find people and like, oh, maybe this will work for me. Maybe this work. No, it's like my own unique design, and I've got to just let it be. So that is right now what I'm discovering in the last couple of years is I have to get 8 or 9 hours of sleep on a regular basis.
Mm.
I might, if I get a burst of energy, that's a good time for me to get up and do some things for my business. And it might last like 4 or 5 hours. And then I need to get outside and I need to touch the earth because grounding is super key because all of my centers as a reflector are open, which means when I walk into a space, I literally am like sampling other people's energy the entire time. And so that can be really exhausting and also
Yeah.
confusing because I would oftentimes, like as an empath, go around the space and all of a sudden I'd be feeling sad or I'd be feeling mad. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I mad about? And then I might make up a problem. And then I realized after a couple years, like, oh, these feelings are not mine. I'm picking
Yeah.
up other people's stuff and I think it's mine. So it's really confusing. It makes your life a lot more confusing than it needs to be. And so I've really allowed myself to be more present and be in the moment and say, what do I need right now? If I have
Mhm.
the money, could I get a massage right now? Yes. Okay, go book one. Uh, do I need a walk right away in the morning, even if I don't want to go on one? Yes. Okay, go do the walk. And so I might not get started on work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so it's
Mhm.
being really, I think the number one thing I've done for myself is listen to myself more. And then that
Yeah.
has really shaped my week. So my week, I only coach on the first and third weeks of the month. And that was
Mhm.
intentional and recommended to me from another coach when I first got started. And I'll forever be grateful to that. So I only coach on those weeks, which leaves the second and fourth week open for me to do other meetings, for me to schedule workshops when people want to do workshops with me, to travel. I mean, I can travel when I'm coaching, but it's just nice to have these weeks that are completely open.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I only coach on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays, and I leave Monday
Mm.
and Friday open for podcast recordings, for other meetings, or for just rest and like only working maybe 1 or 2 hours that day. So I just
Yeah.
have to constantly reprioritize and really be in tune with what I'm needing right now because ultimately what I've realized that last part about what you said about it being what makes my business successful is that if I'm trying to push through and do things for my business when I'm not in a good headspace, it's actually costing me like twice as much time because I'll probably have
Yep.
to go back and fix it. Because the energy that I put out there It's got to be clean and it's got to be clear and it's got to feel good. Because if it feels good, it's
Hmm.
like it magnifies it. Like me putting out a podcast episode that I feel good about will 10x my reach versus me putting out one that I like forced and didn't
Yeah.
flow with and nobody's going to listen to. It's
Yeah.
just like my energy is constantly being reflected in my business. And so that's where I always tell people like slow down to go faster. I know it feels
Yeah.
backwards, but by doing 3 steps instead of 10 steps in one week, I'll actually get farther and I'll have to do
Yeah.
less
And
work.
that is something that I have learned and experienced over the past like 3 months or so, is deprogramming myself from um, go go go
Yeah.
and pushing through. And if I need to rest, letting myself rest. How on that note, how do you break through? I mean, how did you work through? Usually, we feel, especially as women, shame
Hmm.
for not pushing through and
Hmm.
working, to the bone. How
Hmm.
did you work through that or let go of that?
Good question. Well, also it makes me think about, I think as a single woman, I have a partner now, but I've never been married. I don't have kids. And so it's almost expected that I would do more
Hmm.
always, because oftentimes one thing that I would get caught up in before is it sounds so silly, but like people would want me to come over and hang out with them to just like entertain them because they
Yeah.
had kids and they weren't able to leave their house or whatever. So then just come over and hang out with me. And so it's so funny to say, but at the same time, I felt it. I definitely felt like people were like, "Well, you should have all the time in the world. You don't have kids, so
Yeah.
you can come help me. You can come do this." And I'd be like, it doesn't mean that I want to or that I should have to. And so the way that I get through that, because shame is an interesting thing and how it pops up, and it's not like I never feel it. It still definitely comes up. I had to learn that, like, I love what Glennon Doyle says about, disappoint everyone else before you disappoint yourself. And I
Yeah.
really had to give myself permission to love myself first because I had never done that before. I always loved myself, but I never put myself in front of other people. That was just something I had learned is that everybody else always comes first. And I had to stop that. And once I stopped that consistently, then I stopped then the shame talk stopped because essentially I was feeling better and so I recognized, oh, this is actually working. And so it's this
Hmm.
process of allowing yourself to play and try different things and don't get stuck in one way of doing things. Like try loving on yourself hard for a month and see what happens.
Mm.
Because what I found is that I actually have more capacity to love people when I'm doing that versus when I'm not. Like when I feel good, I can actually love people from a more pure place.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I've experienced because of, recent health challenges
Hmm.
that gave me sort of an excuse to, say, hey, you need to rest. And it gave me a get out of jail free card. But
Hmm.
the truth is that I shouldn't have needed that in order to allow myself to rest or take care of
Hmm.
myself.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I guess, sometimes you hit a brick wall, but it would be nice to stop before we get to that point.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I love that you said that. That is something that I actually made a mental decision on back in like, I was working at the Seattle Art Museum from 2009 to like 2012 or so, or 13. And towards the end, I was starting to have panic attacks. And I didn't realize it. I'd be sitting in these
Mhm.
meetings and my hearing would almost go. And I would start to notice that, like, oh my gosh, I think I'm losing my sight. And I recognized, like, my body was trying to tell me something. My body was saying like, "Hey, it's
Yeah.
time to go. This is not the role for you anymore." And when I left, I remember saying to myself, "I will never let myself hit that much of a rock bottom again." And now that's
Yeah.
not even as much of a rock bottom as some people have experienced, but for me, like what you just said, I want to make decisions before I get to that place. I want to make
Yeah.
decisions that are coming from a place of love and not because I'm in pain. And I think a lot of people
Mhm.
wait until they feel the pain. I don't need to feel the pain. And that
Yeah.
requires like trusting yourself. That requires like, I know I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, I trust that what I'm feeling is real and moving from that place of trusting yourself.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
not feeling again ashamed for it, and
Hmm.
that you have to have all these signs, or be in a really bad place. I identify with the panic attacks because I
Hmm.
experienced that in my recent role, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on, and my body
Yeah.
was like, "This is not the place."
Yes.
It's
It's
like,
amazing when you start
hello.
listening to all these things and how your body talks to you. And you start to recognize these things like, oh wow, I've been getting messages this whole time. And I just didn't
Yeah.
realize that it's like my body was writing notes to me and then it started screaming when I wasn't reading the notes.
Yeah. Yeah, and they come in so many different forms, you know. I
Hmm.
mean, the universe tries to contact you in so many different ways, and until
Hmm.
you listen, it'll make you
Hmm.
listen.
It really will.
Um, so I want that's really good. I feel like what we just touched on is really juicy stuff, if you will,
Hmm.
because, we're going
I
through a
wish
lot of
everybody could listen
changes.
to that. Yeah. I wish everybody could start listening to
Yeah.
their bodies like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I wanted to turn to um, the kind of the premise of this show.
Hmm.
So the reason I wanted to have you on this podcast is because I do see you as someone who they wanted to do something in their life and they did it. They took that leap. They, granted themselves permission to live their dreams.
Hmm.
That is not to say that you don't have other dreams and stuff,
Hmm.
but think we already touched on what brought you there. I'm sure we could talk more about that. But also, my question is, where do you want to take your dreams in the future, your professionally and personally?
Mm, good one. When I think back to when I started my business, I've been thinking about this before your podcast and thinking, how do I describe this? Because I think I also need to write about it at some point because I didn't
Hmm.
have a plan. I really didn't have a plan. I knew that I was done, getting really close to done with that job. And and so I think about the conversation I had with my boss when I finally said one day, I think I'm supposed to leave. And we were able to make a plan for it and we could make it a graceful exit, which I'm really grateful for because I never like to leave anybody in a lurch.
Yeah,
But I also knew that if I stayed, I would be feeling resentful and angry. And so I did not have a plan. I didn't have 6 months of savings. I had enough money to last me a month and a half when I left. So I left
yeah,
in July and then I had money. I needed money by September 1st. And so all I can tell you guys is that I think I was almost like I blacked out and I woke up and I'm like, oh shit, I'm doing this. Okay. And I can't tell you that like when you finally follow what feels good for you, things will start to work out in ways that you can't imagine. And that's what I love about this journey is because I really gave myself the chance to like test the universe and see what it was like to co-create because before I was so planned and I would plan things out in all the ways in my life and in my business that I never gave the universe a chance to co-create with me. Like it did,
yeah,
but it was like I barely would let it sneak in because I'd be acting so fast and doing. And so it really just, I think, I don't even know how it happened. It just happened, which is like, for those of you that are listening, they're like, well, that doesn't help me at all, Margaret. All I can tell you is that I knew I was ready to leave and I knew that I wanted to try my own business, but I didn't plan on like what it would be exactly. Like what it would be a coaching business or whatever. Um, but what I think about now and what I want for the future now is I know that I Love It When is a global brand. I can see that.
Mhm.
It's global. And so I don't know what that means exactly. But I see myself traveling around the world in different ways and speaking and having retreats in different parts of the world and just being a part of the global community more. And then
Mhm.
I see personally like really utilizing everything that I'm learning. I don't know. I don't really separate the personal and professional anymore. It's so integrated now, which is what I've always wanted. Like I
Yeah,
am who I am in my business as I am in my personal life. And so I just see everything growing even more beautifully than it has. And recognizing, I guess, all that's coming back to me. I've just been planting all these seeds for so long and doing all of these things to give energy. And so I think there's a time of deep receiving coming for me.
hmm
And that receiving will look like all sorts of things, new friends, new colleagues, new opportunities, new ways to express myself and be supported by people who really want me to continue to express myself.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to hear myself say that. Yeah.
That's a great answer, though, because it's really what you're saying is more of what you're already doing. It's
Hmm.
just,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not more in the material sense, but more in that you're in the flow, you're in the right direction.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and one thing that you touched on about, how you knew it was time for you to sort of start your business is, that co-creating with the universe, it seems like if we feel as individuals that it's all on our shoulders, that we have to do everything,
Hmm.
then that's where we get stopped up.
Hmm.
Because just like you touched on before, picking the three most intuitive, important things to do versus you don't have to do all the 10 things to get to where you
Yes.
need to go. You
Yes.
can have flow or abundance and help flow
Hmm.
into your life if you
Hmm.
just allow it.
Hmm. Yes. 100%. You just made me think of too, like, I don't know if for people who are listening, if you've never thought about this before, but the more that I've learned about energy and different energies from past lives and things like this, we literally all have energies around us who are ready to help us, whether that be
Yeah.
ancestors from your lineage or thing energies from past lives. Like that is also who I see around me. So like when I go up on stage and I speak in front of a group, I'm not up there by
Mhm.
myself. I imagine
Mhm.
myself with my grandmother's up there, some of my other spirit guides are up there. And when you start to realize the support that you actually have in the unseen, all of a sudden it feels way less lonely. And I ask for help every single day. So I have post-it notes up around my house that literally says, delegate to my angels. So every day
Mhm.
I will say, hey, two angels, I'm going to put you on this task. I'm going to put two of you on my finances. I'd like two of you to go help this friend of
Ooh.
mine. So all of a sudden I am interacting with these energies that I can't see, but I know now are there because I am such a data collector. Using that logical side of my brain, I have spent the last like 7 years collecting data to prove to myself that what I can't see is there. And so now I
Mhm.
know it's true. So now I can just operate and I'm not fighting with my logical brain all the time.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because, it's really it seems like it's a choice between having the weight of the world on your shoulders, uh,
Hmm.
and sort of being in fear because we
Hmm.
can't do it all alone,
Nope.
versus being in love or in that
Hmm.
really high frequency
Hmm.
and, leaning on those around you, literally.
Literally. Yeah, I just got chills
Literally.
as you said that. Yeah, it's really, and you don't have to be a religious person or a spiritual person to understand
Mm-mm.
energy and to understand the science. Like, I love how Joe Dispenza says that science is the new language of the mystical and the spiritual because he's really doing a lot of work around showing people how energy works to help explain
Mhm.
what you can't see. And I can't I think this is again why it's part of my business because I wouldn't be in total integrity if I wasn't sharing with people really and truly how I'm doing this. It's
Mhm.
with everything that I can't see. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it
and
really
not
works.
needing to know like the why and the how behind
Yep.
everything, like
That is
just
one of the
letting
hardest
that
things.
go. It's
Yeah.
so hard because that's what we're taught, that's how
Yes.
we're conditioned from childhood.
So much
Um,
so. Yes.
I have two more questions.
Okay.
What's one top piece of advice that you would give young or not young entrepreneurs?
Oh, good one. And meditate daily. I know
Ooh.
it can be one of the hardest things to do and to begin. But what I'll tell you is, again, it's one of those things about if you slow down, you'll go faster. So every day, I meditate. Sometimes I meditate 2 or 3 times a day because now, after you've done it, what I did was I started out with an initial challenge for myself from the book The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod.
Mhm.
And in it, he has you do these savers. He calls them these 6 things every day for 40 days. And after about the 20th day of doing just 5 minutes of meditation, I felt my body relax in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And that was intriguing. I was like, oh, wow, this is getting me to pay attention to my body more. And so that is a habit that I've kept ever since I read that book like 8 years ago now. And so if I don't slow down and do this every day, I don't get clear messages. And when
Mhm.
I'm getting clear messages, that's what helps me realize, like, oh, I only need to do this one thing for my business today. I don't need to do the 10 things that I had on my list to do.
Ooh.
They're telling me I only need, this is the, by doing this one thing, I will move myself further faster. And so meditate, whether it's walking meditation, however you meditate, just please freaking do it. Like,
Hmm.
it's a game changer.
One of my husband and my they like I started out with meditation and yoga. I want to say around 2006 when I had a corporate job, and I sort of stumbled into Source Yoga in Tacoma,
Mm,
yoga place, and I needed that meditation since back then. The owner, Erin Josie, she has gone more and more into meditation over the years because she understood that that's what she needed.
wow.
And so she also understood that that's what we all needed. So I got my husband into yoga and meditation through starting there. And now I've kind of backed off yoga a little bit for the moment, but he has embraced it and ran with it. But all of that short story is our favorite book is 10% Happier by
Oh,
Dan
yeah.
Harris.
That's a great
Oh,
one.
if audience, if you have not read it, it
Hmm.
is right up
Hmm.
there on one of my favorite books
Yeah.
because if you can get through, I want to say the first 175 pages, it's when he goes on the retreat. It
Hmm.
is the best piece to hear his experience of going on a 10-day silent
Yeah.
meditation retreat. Incredible.
Yeah. You just reminded me too about, have you ever read Tribe of Mentors?
Mm-mm,
Tribe of
no.
Mentors by, I believe it's Anthony Ferris. For those of you that are listening, if you have a mind that's very analytical and logical, this is a great one to look at too, because he basically goes through and interviews, I think it's 100 or 125 different authors, speakers, like all these different professionals who have been successful in their careers. And he asks them all the same questions. It's like a set of
Mm.
20 questions, I think. And what I recognized in reading that book was that, oh, almost everyone who's successful meditates. There must be something there.
Wow. There must be something there. Who knew? I mean, while we're on that, we can go a little bit longer.
Yeah.
There's something there, and you'll hear this time and time again, I think, is just quieting the mind because our mind,
Yeah.
how do they say it? It thinks about our thoughts and it's there to make us safe. That's how we've
Yes.
evolved.
Yeah.
But when you quiet the mind, you
Hmm.
listen to, how would you answer that? Yourself or the truth or
Yeah. It makes me think of, so 95% of our day is run by our subconscious mind.
yeah.
So our subconscious mind is telling us how to breathe, how to eat, how to digest. It's giving our body messages without us having to think about it. Because can you imagine like going through the day and you're like, okay, lift your foot now and put it one foot in front of the other. It does all of these things. What it also does though is it retains all of our beliefs, the way we think about things, all
Mhm.
this programming that we got from being a kid, whether that was from your parents or school, like all of this programming. So in order to access that computer system, I like to call it your operating system,
Mm.
you need to access it through, you can access it through meditation, through some different modalities like EFT tapping,
Mhm.
different things like that. But you want to get into that subconscious part of your brain so that you can rewrite beliefs that you want to rewrite. Like if you want to
Mhm.
rewrite your computer system to include more expansive ways of thinking about money, this is how you do it. And
Yeah.
so when you get into meditation, you get to a place where all of a sudden your mind is much more open. Your brain like opens up those little computer doors, I imagine, and it's like, oh, new programming. Oh, let's release these limiting beliefs and put in some new stuff. And so
Yep.
that's kind of how I think about meditation is it helps you access that.
Yeah, and since we're talking about it, the way that you taught me through our coaching is do the record the affirmations on the app on my phone,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you can update them and you can make
Hmm.
them as detailed. So, like
Hmm.
for me, what you showed me,
Hmm.
there's something about hearing it in your own voice, in your own
Yes.
frequency.
Yes.
And I wanted to work on self-worth and I wanted to work
Hmm.
on, my health, including the way I eat and move.
Hmm.
So you can get as detailed as you want. And it
Yes.
works. I mean, that is probably one of the best things that you have shown me throughout our working together.
Oh, I'm so glad. And I got that from a coach back when I was in real estate. And what I recognize is my mentor, Enmei, also says, we have like 70,000 thoughts a day that run through our
Mhm.
brain. How many of those are just repeated negative thoughts from what happened yesterday, what happened when you were a kid, all of those things. And so, what's fascinating about this exercise is I run into quite a few people who don't want to do it, who are like,
Yeah.
I don't like the sound of my voice. I can't hear my. So, I just had a client actually this week who I've been working with on and off for 5 years, and she's been refusing to do it. She finally did it yesterday.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God, this is a huge deal because there's something very vulnerable about hearing your own voice speak power into you if you've been not speaking nicely
Yeah.
to yourself for most of your life. It is
Yeah.
really, this work is not easy. So that's why, yeah, I always commend you when you do stuff like this because it will actually shift you if you allow it, but you have to be open
It
to willing
does.
to.
It really does. And it I think the thing about the 70,000 thoughts,
Hmm.
I really thought that I had healed that part of me, but the way we talk to each other or talk to ourselves, or the thoughts we have, we don't even know we're doing it. It is
Yes,
so
it's so true.
natural.
Yeah,
And
I catch
I've,
myself like in the strangest of times, things coming out of my head
yeah,
where I'm like, whoa.
where did that
Hmm.
come from?
Hmm. Hmm.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, I want to kind of wrap up here. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience today?
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, just I think the message I always have for people that I have for myself as well is that you are so much more powerful than you realize. So if you're listening to
Mhm.
this and there's something that you really have been wanting to do and you've been stopping yourself from making excuses over and over again, just let this be the day where you're like, you know what? I'm going to give myself permission for the next 24 hours to do the things that I want to do. Just give
Yeah.
yourself permission, like your podcast says, and keep following Juliette because she is doing this, and it's
Mhm.
such a cool journey to watch other people give themselves permission. It's as we continue to do this all for ourselves, for each other, this is where we're going to heal the world, is by if we
Yeah.
each follow our own joy and we work on really making happiness for ourselves, this is actually what will heal the world.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. Oh my gosh. Yeah. By becoming your authentic self and
Mhm.
peeling back those layers of that we're carrying around all these years.
Mhm.
I mean, it is just it is incredible.
It is.
Um, if people want to work with you or know
Mhm.
more about you, how can they
Mhm.
get in touch?
Easiest way is probably just to email me, mo@iloveitwhen.org. But you can reach
Mm,
out. I always, fax me, text me, Instagram message me. I'm on all the social media platforms. Yeah, and if you're always, and I always encourage people to like, we can always just meet and chat, and it doesn't mean you have to work with me. I think that's part of this journey too, is realizing like a big part of this is just putting yourself out and connecting and realizing like, if anybody ever tells you like, oh, you have to work with me, or this is exactly what you should do, I would run away from that. So I'm
quickly.
always happy to just, yeah, I'm always happy to just connect with people, um, and see if, like if something happens, great. If not, maybe this was just a step in your journey towards finding what's next for you. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. So your website is iloveitwhen.org.
Mhm.
And I'll include all that information in the show notes.
Okay.
And I just want to express my gratitude for you being on the show. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I met you some months ago.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm grateful to have you now as a part of my life. Mhm.
Oh, thank you. Okay, have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you, everybody, for listening today. This was such a great episode. Thank you, Mo, for your time and sharing all your stories and expertise. If you guys have any questions or want to work with Mo, please find her at iloveitwhen.org, and I'll put her contact info in the show notes as well. If you have any questions for me, please reach out at juliettericci@gmail.com. Also, I want to let you know I have books for sale. Be Like Water, a visual memoir. My most recent book is available on my website, juliettericci.lagman.com, and also my original book, The Juliette Letters, Confessions of an Artistic Mind. A fun note, we're going to republish this one, second version, updated version, and it's going to be amazing coming in January, so look for that. Also, shout out to my brother for the show music. I love it so much. And if you're local friends in Port Angeles, Washington in January 2025, every Tuesday, he'll be playing from 7 to 9 p.m. at Mighty Pine Brewing or Mighty Pines Brewing, and I'll put the show info in the show notes. um, anyway, thank you all again for listening. If you can share and like and follow this podcast, I would so appreciate it. Feel free to share it with your friends, download, and also review. Um, if you don't like the show, then you can skip the review part. Anyway, I love you all. Happy solstice, and we'll see you on the flip side.